Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending this exciting panel on Saudi Arabia's sporting world. And we have no better selection of panelists to give you a real diversity of perspectives and views on the Saudi sports transformation. It's truly a tremendous transformation in sport. It's one that's now being talked about globally. I've personally had the pleasure of working in Saudi sports since 2015, actually working with many of the entities here today, and it's something that I would say I'm personally very proud of the changes that are happening and also the achievements to date. And one of the things I want to start with each of the panelists is to get their perspectives on those big achievements to date. So our first round of questions will be around what their entities are doing to drive transformation and what the milestones have been. We'll then have a second round of questions where we talk about specifically the plans around diversity and inclusion and female sport. And then lastly, we'll speak about the opportunities for people to get involved. So for anyone here who's got a business, what are the opportunities that exist in the Saudi sports landscape? I'm going to start with Shema. Shema is leading Sports for All since 2019 as the managing director, helping to drive sports participation in the kingdom. And Shema, I'd like to understand from you just the role of SFA in driving participation in the kingdom, and if you can just give us a bit of background on that and some of the big achievements that Sports for All have had so far.
Thank you, Donald. Hello, everyone. So when it comes to Sports for All, I think what people see in the media or what people know about Saudi Arabia is the huge amount of money that they're paying all these new football players and the mega events that they're hosting. But what people don't know is that the Crown Prince's focus is in the new Vision 2030 is not about only attracting tourism or PR for the kingdom. It's also about enhancing the quality of life for people living in the kingdom. So there's a huge program called the Quality of Life, part of the Vision 2030 program, and its main focus is to create a healthier, happier community. And Sports for All is part of this program. So we focus on allowing people in Saudi Arabia to live a healthier, happier life by providing programs and enhancing their capability to be physically active in the kingdom. We started off in 2019 focusing on physical activity rates only with a very clear KPI about increasing physical activity in the kingdom. COVID hit, and it was a huge wake-up call for us. So we shifted our strategy completely from physical activity only to wellness. And we look at it from a holistic perspective. So it's not just about getting people moving, it's also focusing on their mental health, their nutrition, and allowing them to live a healthier, happier life. So in a nutshell, that's Sports for All. Regarding the conference today and women in sports, one of our key pillars is diversity and inclusion. And when it comes to Saudi, it's not just ticking a box, ensuring that there's female participation in every event. It's creating the right environment for them, having modest wear, giving them the options or opportunity to be fully inclusive in male events, or having the option to have a segregated area where they feel comfortable being physically active. And we're very proud of including women in all our events. But when we say diversity inclusion, it means all ages, all ethnic, geographic backgrounds, capabilities as well, and ensuring we have tailored programs for each of these segments within the community.
Thank you, Shema. And now the Ministry of Sport is leading on the national sports strategy within the kingdom, and one of the things that I've seen there is they've increasingly been attracting top talent into the ministry, and Mohammed is one of those top talents. So he's coming from a background at McKinsey, consulting there, also from private equity. and he's now leading on strategy within the Ministry of Sport. Mohammed, could you tell us more about the role of the Ministry of Sport in developing the Saudi sporting ecosystem?
Hello, thank you, Donald. And maybe before I start, I'd like to thank the organizers and the audience for sticking through. Maybe to take a step back and really piggyback on what Shema had just mentioned, mass participation, physical activity, and so on, and the quality of life program, Vision 2030. As the ministry, we're the orchestrator, the planner, and the organizer of the sports sector. So we worked on developing a national sports strategy. And this national sports strategy tends to become the bigger umbrella that fits in the different federations, the regional authorities, and the different giga and mega projects. What is the national sports strategy? Our first pillar is to amplify mass participation, introduce sports, increase the level of health and wellness and activity, and this is spearheaded by the Sports for All Federation, among other federations as well. The second would be, how do we create pathways and hone talent and ensure that we convert a participant to become an amateur athlete and so on, and register to a federation. And from there, the funnel ends to the elite performance. How do we get the path to podiums? Now we have the Summer Olympics coming up. How do we increase the span of, or the level of participation towards achieving medals? Or when it comes to our national football team and so on, to become ranked on a high end. But these are the three pillars. But for us to achieve these, we need to go one level down and look at their enablers. What are delivery enablers that can help us achieve across all these three boxes? So here I talk about facilities, human capital, digital and communication, events at all different tiers, and how, as a ministry, we enable regulation, we ensure that we have the right ecosystem for the sports sector to continue flourishing. And lastly, and which we will touch upon probably at the very end, is how do we expand that sports economy and ensure that all different entities, public sector, private sector, have a fair play and a chance to grow this sector.
Thank you, Mohammed. And now I'm going to ask a question to JP. JP's been a leader previously in the UK sporting ecosystem, having been the CEO of the British Olympic Foundation, and now the head of sport at NEOM. And it's fair to say that the mega projects are one of the most talked about parts of the Saudi Arabian transformation. JP, could you tell us a little bit more about NEOM's objectives and the role that sports plays in the development of the region?
Thank you, Donald. And like Mohammed, I would like to say thank you very much to Tara and Laura for organizing this and for inviting me to be a part of it, but equally for all of you for staying and remaining for the last session. Thank you. What I can tell you from the offing is the giga projects, specifically NEOM, is not everything you hear on BBC. And it certainly isn't everything you hear on CNN either. The giga projects were born out of Vision 2030. And to understand the giga projects, you need to understand Vision 2030. And I speak to my Saudi colleagues here who would be far more eloquent than I'm going to be. But the three priorities are around creating a vibrant society. What does that mean? To be healthy and happy in the environment that you live in. To look at a thriving economy, to diversify economy away from a single source, but also to generate innovation in economy. And then to have an ambitious nation. And isn't it funny, in English the word ambition is always perceived to be a negative. In this context, it's around creating social responsibility and ensuring government efficiencies. It's looking at society as a whole. So when you look at that, and then you look at the giga projects that have been created, NEOM was referred to as the iPhone. The Crown Prince held up a phone which was a Nokia, and he said, this is the current world. And he then held up the iPhone and said, and this is NEOM. And NEOM's purpose is really to future-proof industries, to try and address some of the challenges that our world faces, climate change, social disconnection, and I could go on. One of the things for NEOM is to try and bring together the most intelligent, possibly I don't rank within that rating, but some of the challenging minds who want to be out there and agitate. What does it mean to future-proof an industry? From a sport perspective, if you look at the three objectives of NEOM, which is to redefine livability, redefine the way we do business, and redefine conservation, sport plays a key role in all three. Redefining a livability is around ensuring that the offering we have in NEOM is bespoke. So every single one of you could choose to be physically active or take part in sport your way. So for those of you out there that a 5K run would be the most horrendous activity, or indeed to get behind a wheel of a high-performance car, passion of mine, the problem will be is that in some worlds where we have the constraint of legacy, either infrastructure, policy, government, you can't come up with a bespoke way of doing things. In NEOM and in Saudi Arabia, I would say, you can. It is an absolute privilege to be in an environment whereby innovation, looking at things differently and tailoring for everyone's needs to genuinely use sport as a tool for social development is quite exciting. Looking at the conservation, 95% of NEOM, which, to put it in context, is the size of Belgium, is going to be reserved for our nature. It won't be built on in any shape or form, because part of that new form of livability is the marriage of physicality of a human and nature. And finally, the idea of doing business differently from a sporting perspective, it's around tech and innovation. And I was listening intently to the AI and to the eSport conversation earlier. I was listening to the capacity building of how do we grow young Saudi talent. NEOM has that opportunity to partner with certain individuals and organizations to really amplify the ambitions. So to use Shaima's phrase, in a nutshell, NEOM's purpose through sport is to amplify the national sports strategy and genuinely begin to realize the aspirations of a vision of a country who, with 60% of the population under the age of 30, the ambition is real, but they want to do it together. And we want to learn from everyone in the room.
Thank you, JP. One of the priority sports in the Saudi transformation is motorsports, and we have no one better than Martin to speak about that motorsports transformation. Martin is he's had a career in motorsports, previously being CEO of the Bahrain circuit and now CEO of the Saudi Motorsports Company. Martin, could you tell us a little bit more about the role of SMC in growing the Saudi motorsports ecosystem and some of the achievements that you've had to date?
Thank you, Donald, and good afternoon, everybody. And likewise, I'll share my fellow panelists' comments about you staying as you have done, so thank you very much indeed. I'm not sure, by the way, I'm the expert to talk about this, but I'll give it a good go. Saudi Motorsport was effectively created to commercialise and operate the sport in Saudi Arabia. And so in a relatively short period, I think it's 2.5 years, we've effectively staged 4 Formula One Grand Prix, 3 Dakars, 3 Extreme E's, copious other motorsport events. But I think really what's been so significant about the development of Saudi motorsport is exactly, in a sense, what both Shaima and JP have been talking about. It's really giving young people the opportunity. And I personally am extremely proud of the fact that we have got so many young Saudis working in Saudi motorsport. We have 180 people working in the company full-time. As JP was saying, a lot of those people are under the age of 30. 88% of our staff are Saudis, which I think is impressive. And if you think about it, that first Grand Prix back in 2021, where not only did we run the Grand Prix on December the 5th, 2021, but we also started building the circuit on May the 1st, 2021. I mean, it's extraordinary to think about. I pinch myself almost every day, wondering how we really did manage it. But if you also think about the fact that we not only did we construct that circuit, we also constructed a team of people, and the majority of those team of people were young Saudis. So to this day, we have 42% of our staff are female, and I think that's a really encouraging situation for us to be in. And as I said earlier, I'm really proud of that, because my own passion is growing the opportunity for young Saudis to develop career paths using motorsport or sport as a platform. And there are so many exciting developments in Saudi Arabia, aren't there? I mean, if you look at what we've recently achieved with our own team, and having, for example, our new director of Formula One is a young Saudi woman. So a young Saudi will be the event director for Formula One in 2025 and beyond. And not only that, she will also be leading on other motorsport activities, the GT series, which is coming, and others that will be there in the future. And she, incidentally, has a team of about 8 people, 5 of whom are also female. And I think that's a really exciting development. My own boss, if you like, at the Ministry of Sport is a female. And so I report into her. She gives me a hard time. But at the same time, I think it's really encouraging to see females in the workplace. And that extends also to the motorsport categories that we're running. So you have events like Extreme E, which is now very much part of our calendar. It's a solid part of our calendar. The event's taken place at NEOM in the past. And here you have not only men competing against men, but more importantly, females competing against men in the same categories. They drive the same cars. They start the races against each other. And that's fantastic in a world where in Formula One it's clearly a male-dominated grid. Our recent introduction of the Formula One Academy, which is an all-female racing series promoted by Formula One, 5 races this year in conjunction with Formula One events. We ran the first one in 2024, and it was a huge success. And not only were there female racing drivers out there competing against other females, but perhaps more importantly from our perspective, it gave us a chance to connect with the community. And within the community, that event touched 110,000 people, not just girls, but at the same time, females and boys and men throughout the educational space in Jeddah and throughout the kingdom. And that's a really encouraging position to be in. And in actual fact, we purposefully made sure that men were involved in that program. Formula One Academy is all about females, but we wanted to demonstrate where Saudi is in terms of its progression forwards, that men and women play an equal role. And that's why I'm so pleased of the career paths that we're able to develop. Clearly, we want to see young Saudis become champions of the future in a variety of sports. But for me personally, we might find, I don't know, we might find 5 men and women who are going to become Saudi champions of the future in the next 10 years. We're going to find 1,000 times that who can find careers in motorsport. I think here in the UK there are 50 or 60,000 people involved in motorsport. We aren't going to achieve that overnight, but we've made a start, and I think it's been a really positive start.
Thank you, Martin. And Ben, you've been in the region now for 17 years. You're the managing director of CSM, one of the biggest sports and entertainment agencies in the region, with offices across the GCC. What have you seen as being the biggest changes over the past few years in the kingdom, and how have they impacted your business?
Well, thank you, and I will reiterate for the 5th time our thanks. We're very, very lucky. We work with many of the entities, leading organisations in the private and public sector who are investing in this extraordinary transformation of the sports sector in the kingdom. We've had our business in the region for 18 years, and I think probably working in and around Saudi Arabia for about 11. And 11 years ago, when we started probably working with our first clients, we were delivering community football programs for Coca-Cola in Riyadh and Jeddah and Dammam. We were working with the Saudi Olympic Committee on developing long-term strategic performance pathways. It was a very, very different place. It wasn't an easy place to work then, no question. It was hard in terms of visas. There wasn't a huge amount of the infrastructure, sporting infrastructure, that exists now and is being rapidly built. And, it was a pretty fragmented sporting ecosystem at the time. There was funding going into football, certainly, and, there wasn't a Ministry of Sport then. There was a General Sports Authority. So it was quite fragmented. It was quite hard to kind of operate in a coherent, joined-up way. Fast forward now, and has been reported and discussed at length today. The transformation is genuinely astonishing. It is night and day, and for a business like ours, it's almost impossible to explain. If you've not been to Saudi Arabia, either 10 years ago or today, it's very hard to explain the pace of that transformation that's gone on. JP mentioned Vision 2030. That obviously was the major milestone that has permitted this transformation, not just obviously in sport, but across the entire country, many different sectors. I think there's two things from a sports point of view about Vision 2030 broadly. Number one, as JP said, sport is written into the absolute fabric of that strategy vision. And so if you think about what was a disconnected, fragmented ecosystem a decade ago, now there is real clarity. And although we have many different organizations, from giga projects to ministries to public and private sector brands investing in different areas, and each obviously have their own areas of focus, there is a macro understanding of what everybody within the kingdom is driving towards. And that is absolutely, I think, without parallel, without comparison anywhere else in the world. And the advantage that that brings and the clarity of purpose that that brings when we're working with our clients is fantastic. So that's the macro. If you think back then over that 10-year journey or 11-year journey on some of the micro points or micro moments, sport has been a real enabler of a lot of that change. And we talk in our industry a lot about the power of sport, and sometimes we talk about that in quite lofty ways. It is extraordinary within the kingdom you are to genuinely see and live and work in a sports sector that you can see is making some meaningful differences. It was the first ever e-Prix in Riyadh, in Diriyah, where the first ever e-visa was issued for foreigners to get it. 30 seconds, a minute process online now to visit the kingdom. That was brought in as around a sports event. It's the incredible Grand Prix that Martin runs and the e-Prix that I think really catalysed live music and entertainment and incredible concerts that happen in and around sports events and elsewhere. And as Martin, JP said, the calibre of people that are working in these organisations and delivering these programmes is genuinely astonishing. Ambitious, well-educated, and extraordinarily proud people of their culture and their nation, quite rightly, all galvanised by a clear central strategic approach.
Thank you. And I think you can already see from the panelists just the level of passion and energy and excitement that there is around the transformation plans in Saudi. Now I want to go a little bit deeper into the commitment that the kingdom has towards diversity and inclusion. And I'll start with Shaima. Again, Sports for All takes an incredibly data-driven approach to its work and to the programs and initiatives it does. In your tracking of females in the kingdom when it comes to their attitudes and behaviours in physical activity, what are the main insights that you've drawn, and how have you incorporated these into your initiatives?
First of all, we're very proud to be very data-centric, very evidence-based, and we design our programs and reassess our strategy based on the data and insight that we collect on a monthly basis. And like they said before in the previous panel, we don't want to take programs and implement it at Saudi. What the Saudi market is looking for is something completely different. We either tweak successful programs and implement it, or design programs tailored for the Saudi community. So just regarding data and insights, first of all, female participation rates have increased 150% in Saudi since 2019, and that's something we're very proud of. When it comes to women specific in Saudi, like they said in the previous panel, 70% of the Saudi population are under 30. If you don't get the women or females or mothers active, you will never be able to get that generation active as well. So one of the interesting findings that we have is 70% of Saudi females prefer to work out at home. And we have created an application that has more than 500,000 downloads, almost 300,000 active users on a weekly basis, and 67% of the app users are females. So we have created tailored training programs, challenges, classes, and through the application, we can follow the geographical locations of these females. So we can see that females in Tabuk, females in Ar'ar are getting whatever offerings that we're giving through the application. One of the also very interesting data we collect is it's not just numbers and statistics, it's also mindset shift and what's acceptable. So for example, when we first introduced the Women Football League, the Community Women Football League in 2020, it was not defined as football league. We tailored it as supporting the UN SDGs to make it acceptable to the public. And when we did social media monitoring, 98% was positive, 2% was mutual. It wasn't even negative. So the data and insight that we collect, and we also share with multiple entities in Saudi, whether they're private or public, basically supports us in knowing what are the direct needs that the community is looking for, and how can we offer them these needs to allow them to be more physically active.
Thank you, Shaima. And I just want to re-emphasize the 150% increase in female physical activity that SFA and others have played a role in. It's globally unparalleled, and to achieve such an increase was a result of a huge effort and a lot of work from Shaima and others. So I just wanted to not to get lost. Mohammed, the Ministry of Sport provides guidance on the national sports plans, policy guidance, strategic input. How have you incorporated diversity and inclusion within the work of the Ministry of Sport?
So if I refer back to the National Sports Strategy, we use 3 guiding principles: integrity, merit-based sector, and most importantly, diversity and inclusion. So every aspect of this strategy, what I mentioned before, the mass participation and the different enablers, all have to go through a filtration process to ensure that all these 3 guiding principles are implemented. So let's take, for example, facilities. If we were to build, let's say, new facilities, to what extent can we accommodate for every different group and ensure that there's facilities for the females, locker rooms, and so on, if we were to run any renovations on existing facilities. So there is a special diversity and inclusion initiative purely focused on refurbishment and upgrading facilities to ensure that we have an opportunity for females to engage in sports and participate. Let's use another example, events. To ensure that we continue converting from the mass participation funnel to talent development, there is also a specific initiative focused on creating competitive events to purely for women, whether karate, whether on the motorsports, or whether in billiards. All depends on different federations submitting their request to ensure that we have focused events for females. And lastly, the human capital. Maybe I shed light here. And this is everything around the athletes. So now we have a first female, Saudi female, FIFA authorized referee. We have an AFC authorized coach. A lot of executives. My personal line manager is a female. And among all the different federations, board representation has to have a female. So there are different interventions taking place across every enabler to ensure that our guiding principles are implemented: merit-based, integrity, and most importantly, diversity and inclusion.
Thank you, Mohammed. JP, in relation to women in sport, can you tell us about some of NEOM's major milestones to date?
I'd be delighted. I'm quite proud of them, is why I'd be so delighted. To be fair, NEOM's aspirations around sport are to be a global innovative hub, but it's based on 3 themes, the first of which is sustainability across all 3 elements, the second is innovation, and the third is diversity and equality. And everything that we do is checked against those 3 themes. In my team, I have a 50-50 split, men and women. So like Martin, I'm very proud of that. A large proportion of the 50 female are young Saudis. In fact, I have one of my young Saudis with me today, Huda, and she's coming specifically for international experience. We make sure that the team themselves, every single specialism, has at least 2 Saudi females in the team to ensure that there's capability building. I've got someone here, again, who is in my team, Neil Kuplin, who created the very first partnership with Mercedes around racing. Part of the key piece of that partnership was to ensure that the internship that was available had a 50-50 split. men and women. We carry it on, and Martin already referred to it, Extreme E. We have NEOM McLaren Racing. NEOM McLaren Racing is created specifically to look at the electric series. So that's FE and Extreme E, and Extreme E has men and women racing against and with each other. Leanne Arnold is here, another woman in my team. She drives the narrative. Everything that is pushed out about NEOM sport is driven around an equal opportunity, equal accessibility, and equality of voice. So we ensure that the athlete voice is put into all of the measurements that we use. We created the very first revenue-generating asset, the Adventure Sports Hub, co-managed by a female. We looked at the beach games for 4 years running, which is an amalgamation of world championships and world cups that are hosted in NEOM, participation by both men and women at every single level, including the relationship that we have with the national federations, whereby we're training and offering opportunities for young Saudi athletes to come and compete at an international federation registered event. I start talking faster because, as you can see, it is incredibly exciting, the opportunity that is available, but the achievements that have been made to date have absolutely been made in support of the national sports strategy. The Sport for All ethos of having people physically active is something that drives community life, through from a paddle court all the way through to a walking club that our group chief executive now takes part in. So much of our success is driven by the ambitions and aspirations of the nation, but we look at each of our ambitions through that optic of diversity and equality. So whether it's capacity building, international global partnerships, the events that we've already delivered and we continue to deliver, whether it's specialisms around golf or esports or adventure sport, all of that, because we have no legacy, we have the opportunity to drive it, to ensure that there is equal opportunity of access and equal opportunity, full stop, for anyone who lives in NEOM now and continues to live in the future.
Thank you, JP. And just brings to mind, I mean, you have now the NEOM Sports Club, and sports clubs or football clubs or sports clubs globally tend to be male-dominated environments. And I know first-hand experience that JP is making sure that the NEOM Sports Club will be something quite different from that.
It's exciting because, this is really exciting because it's a new initiative by the Crown Prince to privatise sports clubs. At the anchor is a football club, but around that, for the NEOM Sports Club, we have 12 sports, both offered to male and female, grassroots through to high performance. Our men's football team, little shout out, was promoted to the first division.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And our women's team are actually in the first division, and we look to have both teams playing in the SPL in the next 3 years.
Fantastic.
Congratulations.
Martin, we heard earlier from some of the panelists, I think Karen Webb-Moss and Abby Eaton talked about motorsports and some of the challenges, but also some of the progress in motorsports when it comes to inclusion. What are SMC planning in this space when it comes to getting more females into motorsports?
First of all, isn't it fantastic to listen to these two speaking with such passion about women in the workplace and so on? And seriously, it's fantastic, Jamie. Donald, there's so many things that we've got going on. I mean, I've talked about the team that we have at SMC, but actually in the sports field, I think what's really encouraging, I think you've got to remember that we let's blow our trumpet a little bit. We've done really well at doing the top level stuff. You know, we do Formula One well, we do Dakar well, we do Extreme E well. Ben's talked about Formula E. We just signed the World Rally Championship, for example, and announced that last weekend. And it's great to see that we've already got a lot of interest from female competitors who want to be contesting all of those events. And I think the things that have perhaps filled me with the greatest pride and the things that we're able to focus on going forward are events such as the Formula One Academy. I think genuinely, although they probably won't like me to say it, I think Formula One were actually really surprised coming to Saudi and finding out the commitment that we made to staging that event. They actually sent people to the event to teach us how to do it. I think they left having been told how to do it by us, and I think that was always that fills you with a certain degree of pride, and it's a nice box to tick. But also, so I said, we do the top stuff really well. I think what we're now focusing on is the junior, the grassroots side of the sport, the foundations of the sport, building a platform there. And that's where we see men and women participating on an equal level. And we talked about Extreme E, where they're actually racing against each other. We've just built the first FIA/CIK homologated kart track in Jeddah, which we opened just before the Grand Prix this year in March. And it's so exciting to see the number of young women and young men attending that facility literally every night. We ran it throughout Ramadan. It was open between 9 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was absolutely packed. And most importantly, it's packed by parents who've been encouraged by their kids to come and compete on the kart track. And this is kids of both genders. And a lot of the girls are really, really driven. I mean, these are 6 to 12-year-olds. They're driving electric karts, and that is the future. And as I said earlier, there will be Saudi champions of the future. But not only that, a lot of those youngsters who are competing, whether they become a Saudi champion, whether they become a racing driver or a rally driver or a bike rider, it doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is that they are now interested in looking at sport in general, motorsport, I hope, as an opportunity for a career path for themselves. So whether it's as an engineer or a technician, a social media or a PR or a medic or whatever it may be, there are so many opportunities within the sport. And I think sport is such a fantastic platform and a great driver for if you like, achieving the aspirations of young people. And I'd like to think that that's what we're doing best. I mean, the list of what we're doing probably would go on and on and on. I'll take us way past 5 o'clock or 5:30, just going through that. But it is exciting. I think you can hear by the voices of all the panelists here, there is a genuine passion about what we're doing and what Saudi is doing and can do in the future.
Fantastic. Ben, you work with many of the leading Saudi brands who are at the forefront of sports sponsorship, both in the kingdom and internationally. To what extent are those Saudi sponsors focused on women's sports, and what role does women's sports play within their partnership strategies?
Well, one of the many things that Vision 2030 is all about, and it's been mentioned before today, it's obviously economic diversification for the kingdom. The economy broadly in the kingdom is maturing at a rapid pace. And so with that comes, from a sponsorship point of view, a much more, let's say, strategic, mature approach to brand partnerships. And that has happened, like everything, in an unbelievably quick amount of time. So we're talking about businesses that clearly are strategic, have their own objectives and purpose and sectors, and are in partnerships broadly for very clear strategic reasons. And therefore, if you think about this logically, you have almost half the population of consumers are women in the kingdom. We've heard all about the rapid increase in female participation over the last few years in sports. And so obviously brands, sponsors are quite obviously and quite rightly for their own business needs, marketing themselves through partnerships to women. So, we've seen many, and we're fortunate to work with many. We just think about the relatively recent deal between Adidas and the Saudi Football Federation. It's a historic kit partnership deal. Incidentally, the Saudi Football Federation pays equal wage, equal salaries to its men's and women's teams, which is, how many other countries around the world do that? So, extraordinary. So, you think about from an Adidas point of view, and they're not a client of ours, but, that is a fantastic environment to build a partnership around and enter into a market and clearly trying to sell product. We're looking at Aramco, huge investments in golf, have really focused on women's golf, the Aramco Team Series, as have the Public Investment Fund with both golf and with their recent partnership with the WTA, which supports or complements their partnership in men's tennis with the ATP And those partnerships are, amongst many other things, partly about driving further participation opportunities for women within the kingdom. So,
I mean, who would have thought that you'd have had a cosmetics brand in Formula One? I mean, so we saw in March 2024 this year, Charlotte Tilbury launching a cosmetics brand on a car in Formula One Academy. And we were really delighted that was done in Saudi, and I think that had a really solid impact.
No, it's a tremendous example of a new type of partnership, and also on Ben's point around the equal pay, the Saudi Games, which is a new competition that's been launched in Saudi recently, it's from the very get-go insisted on equal pay for the male and female athletes who come in the top 3 places within each of the sports in that. We're going to have one last round of questions for the panel.
I should just jump in and say for the new regulations that are being written for the new areas, that is also being mandated that it's equal pay and equal opportunity across everything.
Fantastic. So our last round of questions will be on the opportunities for you, for businesses and people who want to get involved in the Saudi sports transformation. Shema, SFA have done an incredible job in increasing the demand for sport and physical activity. What are the top opportunities for investors and overseas partners who want to get involved and support this growth in the demand for sport?
There are, I think, multiple opportunities. Like Donald said, first of all, there's a huge demand. So physical activity rates increased in Saudi from 13% to 48.2%. So there's a huge demand when it comes to the market. The second thing is probably modest wear. We worked back, Donald remembers, in 2018 with Nike to create the Nike hijab. Now an American Olympic fencer wears the Nike hijab. So it's not restricted to the region. The third thing I would say is technology. And wearables. We have partnered with Fitbit before. We're starting a new partnership with Apple next month. There's a huge demand. 48% of the Saudi market are e-gamers, and 50% of that are females. The other thing is probably sponsorship. So we have been sponsored by multiple global brands like Nike and ASICS for the Riyadh Marathon. We have also created other local IPs such as Sand Clash, which is a functional fitness / CrossFit event, where we had people come in last year from 38 different countries to participate. We have also the SFA Expo. It's a B2B, B2C conference where we get the businesses, the providers, the locals able to network together, where the business owners can sit with the customers and see what are the needs and what are they looking for. The final thing I would say is human capital. So when we first launched the Community Women Football League in 2020, there were no female referees, there were no female coaches in Saudi. So we had to partner with other international ministries to get the right human capital, train and shadow, and allow the Saudi population to create jobs for the young females to be part of the sports sector.
Thank you, and I would highly recommend for anyone interested in that sports participation space to keep an eye out for the SFA Expo. It's a great event for those who are looking to get involved. Mohammed, the ministry is looking to increase the level of private sector participation within the national sports sector. What are some of the opportunities for those who are interested in getting involved?
I think whatever Shema said, and that's maybe the synthesis of that note, is we've created the demand and we're inviting now the supply to step in. As part of the national sports strategy, we want the contribution of the private sector to increase all the way to 30%. And the interventions are all over. So if we think about the human capital side, it's academies, from athlete level, coaches, referees. When it comes to the digital ecosystem, we think about the whole value chain. So hardware, whether wearables and so on, software, amplifying fan experience, whether at home or whether at stadia by developing interventions or startups and so on. We, as the Ministry of Sports, are also developing different areas where we can match with investors, whether within the VC community powered by the Vision 2030 or the accelerators and incubators. If we think about the event side, there are across the value chain, from the event management side to hospitality angle, food and beverage, and so on. So the areas of involvement of the private sector are big, and over the past couple of years is a good example of how popular and how the growth rate of sports takes place. Maybe one last point I'd like to shed light on is from the privatization aspects of clubs, naming rights. And it's a good opportunity for the private sector to get, if interested in acquiring a club from the SPL or the Saudi Pro League or the second division. There are big exercise to privatize clubs, and that potentially, as you ride the growth of the sports sector, can be a very interesting and attractive upside.
So if anyone's looking to buy a sports club, keep an eye out for. Speak to Mohammed afterwards.
So if you're looking for front of shirt, there's only one sports club you come and talk to, though.
So JP, NEOM's going to be hosting major events as part of its, as a key pillar of its strategy. As you develop your sports offering across NEOM, what opportunities does this present for the broader sports industry, specifically suppliers and vendors?
To be fair, it's very similar to what both Shema and Mohammed have already said, because NEOM is a region, we're developing an entire ecosystem. So it ranges from grass sports through to high performance, specified focuses around adventure sport, tech and innovation, high performance sport, events, infrastructure, and I could go on. So from manufacturers to operators, from those that would like to make a contribution to develop the capacity and capability of the kingdom to be able to build that workforce that will then take us into the future. The opportunities are vast. I would have one caveat, and I will use a comment and a saying from a young basketball athlete who is a Saudi female who played in the semi-finals of our beach games last year in a full stadium with 6,000 spectators in a remote corner of Saudi Arabia, who, when they didn't win, and needless to say, as you can imagine, they were beaten and they were second, as she left, she did say, "I have to say thank you. I had no idea the breadth and depth of what NEOM had to offer and how much you wanted to share it with everyone else. But you share it because they share your values." So I would say for those that are coming into the country, I think it was Martin who said, come and see Saudi and understand it. Katie and I were talking about it before. You need to understand the environment you're coming into. Chris, who's actually sitting in the middle of the room, we had the same conversation yesterday. It's often very easy to make assumptions around partnerships or contributing or helping, but unless you're there and you understand the landscape, and most importantly, you understand the culture and those that we are doing all of this for, who are in this room, a talented, dynamic society and generation of Saudis, it's making that value contribution, I think, that is as important for any operator.
Couldn't agree more, and I think having that intention to the authentic intention to localize is really important for anyone coming and setting up or doing business in Saudi. And Martin, we've now had 3 editions of the F1, 4 editions of the F1. I should know that. So 4 editions of the F1, and with each edition, I know the percentage of local suppliers has increased, and it's been one of the KPIs that you've had is to really create a local motorsports economy around those major events. What are the opportunities in that motorsports ecosystem and supply chain, and what's the best way, again, of approaching that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. As you rightly say, it is 4 races in 27 months, and I'm not sure anybody's done that before, let alone paid the hosting fee in 27 months of 4 races. But I think what excites me, and by the way, first of all, I'll fully endorse what JP has articulated so succinctly. I think sport is an amazing platform on which to create the opportunities for getting involved in many, many different ways. But back to your question, I think the crucial thing from our perspective is just to ensure that we that we use the sport to effectively increase the opportunity we for suppliers, but perhaps more importantly, we have in the past imported a lot of events, whether it's motorsport events, whether it's boxing, whether it's football, whatever it might be, tennis. We've imported a lot of events. I think what we're so excited about in Saudi motorsport is that we're now looking at creating our own events, so creating a Saudi IP where we have got events which we are creating ourselves, which are populated by young Saudis, where young Saudis can cut their teeth from a business perspective, whether it's in terms of technicians or engineers, maybe drivers, but more importantly that they are in the business of developing motorsport opportunities and IPs which are Saudi-owned, which we can then export abroad. And that, I think, is a really positive statement and effectively underlines exactly what the sports sector is able to produce in Saudi Arabia. So it's not just seen as a country that imports lots of sports events and all the unfortunate terminology that goes with that, but we in turn can turn that through 180 degrees and make sure that we're creating events that we can export with young Saudis at the forefront of those activities.
Thank you, Martin. And then last question of the day from me for Ben. CSM are an example of an international business that's successfully been helping with the growth of the Saudi sporting ecosystem. What tips would you have for those who are looking to work in Saudi Arabia?
I think it's mainly been mentioned already. I mean, the first word that comes to mind is authenticity, an authentic commitment. We're very proud to have established our office in Riyadh some time ago. We have a team on the ground, and Saudi Arabia is obviously at the absolute heart of the global sports industry at the moment. It's an extremely attractive place to be for a business like ours, but we've operated in the region for a long, long time. We're extremely mindful of the fact that we are essentially guests in the country. We have to commit and provide genuine value to Saudi Arabia, to the people of Saudi Arabia, whether that's through employment, whether it's through knowledge transfer, whether it's through bringing new IP. There has to be an authentic commitment and a long-term commitment. That comes with the rules and regulations around Saudiization, a commitment to employ Saudis into the business, which we're very proud to have done, and is a really important. I'm staggered by your numbers. That's fantastic. We can aspire to that, and even the new regional headquarters legislation and ensuring that your regional business operations are headquartered in the kingdom. That's something we're doing as well. So, it has to be authentic, and it has to be seen as a genuine commitment. It has to be a genuine commitment.
Thank you. And personally, I feel like I've learned a lot over the last hour listening to these great panelists. So please join me in giving a round of applause to everyone on the panel. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, just give us a second. I would like to call the stars behind today, Laura and Tara. Please come and join me up here. Please. Come on, come on.